Well, welcome, Albert. You're back again with me. I'm Ali Uren. It's good to have you here, founder of Kickstart and the Circular Workplace. My mission, before I throw it over to Albert to introduce himself, is to make sure that teams can work smarter by making sure that we really do leverage the skills that we have by repurposing them back into the business, bringing new life to them, making sure that we're adopting an approach that's just in time learning because the shelf life of skills are getting
Yeah.
shorter. So that is where I dedicate my brain space and company in taking it out further into the world. And I was lucky enough to meet you probably nearly a couple of years now, Albert, and we've shared lots of headspace. So before I set up today's conversation, tell us a little bit about you, where you are, and the work that you're doing at the moment. Just give us a bit of a brief intro into your role.
Yeah, thank you, Ali, and it's very glad to be back again with this kind of topics.
Mm.
And then for me, I'm Albert, and I came from Jakarta, Indonesia. And for you who's new to us, I'm currently working in the space of the HR advisory part. My current company is Strada, and then we also have services in the HR technologies and then the global payrolls areas. That's a short introduction for me.
It is a very short version. You've got a very
Yeah.
long, big, broad career, as do I, and I think that's part of why we have the discussions that we do.
Yeah.
So when you come and spend some time with us, we're not going to go to the usual suspects as well, and that's the value in it. So
Sure,
today
sure.
we've got less than half an hour, but we're going to kick it off, and it won't be the last time. Well, it isn't the last time that you and I,
Mm.
or first time that
Yeah.
we've spoken about it, but um, I wrote a post a couple of days ago, and people that might not know me, I've been posting original content, nearly probably on average 5 days a week for nearly the last 2 years. And the post a
Yeah.
couple of days ago got the most, for me, the most comments, engagement, interaction, that probably the second highest post ever, right? So
Mm.
there's something in this topic, and the topic is generational fluidity. And it's a topic or a context or a sort of a term that's come out of a conversation you and I had a few months ago. And it's something that clearly has sparked an interest and piqued a connection in people that
Mm.
they either see it in themselves, or which I'm sure they do, or they're seeing it in their organizations, or they're leading teams and they're seeing it here, right? So when you think about it, I just want to throw over, and this is a free flowing, conversation,
Mm.
but I want to throw over to you and say, what is it, right? Like, we talk a lot about generational difference, right? And we talk about you've got to facilitate it. And we've done a video on that before about you need to facilitate it, not fear it. So what is generational fluidity in
Mm.
your opinion? How do you see it? Before we dive into this, let's start with a
Yeah,
definition.
yeah, yeah. So, okay, this is something that one of the things that I really appreciate from your post, your original thoughts, is like
Mm,
you come up with this words
mm.
that actually capture the essence of my mind in
Yeah,
in
right.
this like several words, and I didn't know that those words exist, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it's not a jargon or everything else, but it's
Mm,
like, oh, how you came up with these words. When you mention generational fluidity,
yeah,
why I really like it so much, because yeah, I think it's like for me personally, it's like the antithesis of the generational gap that you
yeah,
mentioned.
yeah.
And then we came up with so many concepts and frameworks to mention about this generational gap and how to, capture them and map them and then create solutions for them. But I don't think it's enough people talking about what you said, generational fluidity. And for me,
Mm,
the generational fluidity means that's not just something that overlap between the, each of the generations or each of the age group, right? But it's something that how you're going to like what is it? Fluidity. You're going to to flow
mm,
or the motion of each of the nations, but by recognizing that they actually have some kind of silver linings there.
yeah.
They actually have some kinds of, something that actually bonds them together or binds them
Mm-hmm,
together.
mm-hmm,
So it's not the gap, but it's how you navigate through the gaps and how you create the silver lining between each of the nations,
mm.
and you create something that you know, actually that can combine them together and make them more productive in the
Yeah.
terms of workforce. So that's actually for me for the definition there.
No, that's fantastic, and
Yeah.
I have written, and I've put the links in to the post as well too. That
Mm,
we are having in Australia, the US. I'm not sure where Indonesia's at, but
mm,
4 generations in 5 years' time, we'll have 5 different generations in our workplaces, right?
yeah.
So, and a lot of the Western worlds are the same, and Asia will be there too
Mm,
soon. I'd say if they're not already joining us. And that is huge, right? Like that is not
yeah.
something that you can deny. You cannot stop
Yeah.
reality, right? And
Yeah.
neither we
Yeah.
should, neither we should. And I think you make a really good point that I want to go here in my next question is,
Mm,
we need to know, as I said, to facilitate it, not fear it. We need to embrace it. We need to understand how we will
yeah.
leverage it, right? And I talk a lot about that in my work as a
Mm,
facilitator and working and partnering with teams and leaders
yes.
is that when we know how to do different, then obviously we can get different, right? But
Yeah.
I think we're more in a fear mindset at the moment. So I really want to do the work around how we can start to move from that because we can leverage it. We're going to talk through some really practical tips in the conversation today around how we've
Yeah.
done it and what we can do around that as well.
Mm,
So let me just take you to the next question. What are some of the changes that you're seeing
mm,
when it comes to generational difference in a professional context, right? Like what
mm.
is happening that you're seeing, in your own experience in Southeast Asia, Indonesia, but what are you seeing there? What is happening in a professional context when it comes to generational difference?
Yeah. So, first of all, I think the one of the things that's again the same around in the Southeast Asia is especially Indonesia now. There are the trends that the retirement age is getting extended,
Yeah,
right?
same
Yeah,
in Australia. Yeah.
it's almost same. So when you're saying that currently there are five this workforce generations groups in the workplace,
Mm-hmm.
and it could be happening also in Indonesia here
Okay.
currently, right?
Okay.
That's the first thing. And the second, what is actually changing now? So it's more like how the new, not the new. I'm going to mention that how the leaders in the current organizations are actually taking notes and getting their focus on the latest workforce generations,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm not saying that it's wrong. It's very good. But again, I'm saying like, why are you taking notes and focusing just now, right? Because they are creating their programs, they're creating their EVP, employee value proposition, they're creating their employee branding to gain the tractions of acquiring these new talents.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's one of
Mm-hmm.
the what I saw one of the biggest things. And then they are focusing on the mental health, on the well-being, everything else, because they are recognizing, oh, the current workforce generation are focusing on that. Now I know that we're going to talk about this more later, but I just want to give
Mm-hmm.
some bait here. That's uh, me especially that I experience I think I'm the Generation X, I don't know, or millennials, something like that. Yeah, so, right? I mean, we also want that, right? We also
Yeah.
want the well-being. We also want health, mental health, since before yeah. I mean, again, we're going to discuss about it later, I think. But yeah, I think that's the biggest shift currently. I mean, I know it's triggered by the pandemics
Yeah.
with the mental health and the
Yes.
well-being, everything else. But then it's refocusing that. Oh, you know what? I think the current generation also focusing on this, on how they have the work and life balance, how the work have to have meanings for them, and this is something that the biggest shift that I saw in the professional world,
Yeah.
that the
Yeah.
leaders and the organization are focusing on that. Not only on the skills, technical capabilities, everything else, but yeah, they're focusing on that. I think that's the biggest shift. Yeah.
Yeah, no, no, thank you for that. Let me come back to that too, right? And that
Mm,
that was
mm.
what I sort of said in that post a couple of
Yeah.
days ago.
Yeah.
That while my age would put me very much in Gen X, my attitude is very Gen Y probably, right? Like how I live, how I want to be working, how I want to partner with in the workplace, what are my expectations
Yes,
are
yes,
around that,
yes.
what the life and how I want to live, the characteristics and traits culturally
Yeah,
that I connect to
yeah.
professionally.
How you want to be authentic, right?
Right. Okay. And being
That's the
able
yeah.
to,
That's
and like I said, just how I want to experience my own identity around it is not traditionally, and this is what this element about that fluidity is that it is like water. So when I wrote that, I was thinking around that it has to be able to move and bend, and because as you said, I know that look a 60-year-old now is not a 60-year-old of 40 years ago. They're very different, right? And as I said, I think the fluidity is being able to bend and design and not put people into those boxes that we traditionally have, right, Albert, to try and make sense of ourselves and our workplace and our own identity. And and age has been an easy way to do that, right? But it's not about the labels anymore, right? Like it's not the labels. We need to get the labels and burn them because they're not helpful and they're no longer relevant and meaningful. And as you said, people show up in many different ways, and we can be many different elements that make us who we are and how we're going to be productive. And so that
yes,
fluidity, that piece is really, it is no longer saying, well, if you're Gen X, you're like this, and millennials, you must be like that, right? You might have
yeah,
traits, like I
yeah,
said, we can be many different things depending on the circumstance that we're
yes.
facing, right? And that's why I want to
Totally.
start to say, well, hang on, we need to be able to, if we're going to design those organisations, it starts with challenging our own bias and our own expectations or standards around, the way we've made decisions around who needs to go where.
Yeah,
So, because we can't facilitate it if we're not willing to challenge ourselves, right?
yeah.
And how we think around it as well. So let's take, because you and I, we love to talk. And we're already at 10:15, right? And I
Yeah.
want to spend some time. So we've talked around what generational fluidity looks like for us and why we've
Mm.
coined it and why it matters, right? And we've
Yeah.
done other videos on that and we'll do more to come. We've talked about what it can show up like as well too. The other thing I want to say is, okay, so how do we then say, if I really want to facilitate this, right? If I really
Yeah.
want to embrace generational fluidity and make it something that I can leverage, yeah,
Yeah.
from not just a human growth perspective, but from a commercial perspective. Yeah, because
Yeah.
as I said, the two have to be able to work together.
Yeah.
We don't have one without the other. So what are some of them? And I'm going to share some examples as well from out in the field. But from your experience or in your opinion,
Mm.
what are some of the things, some of the actions that you might have taken that you've also experienced where we start to move through it just being about words to something that is a very sustainable way of how we experience work beyond leadership feeling FOMO and hype. All
Okay.
right. Because as I said, I know, and you've seen it, and I know you've referred to it before, and we might not be any different here, I don't think, in Australia. Leaders can
Mm.
get onto words or terms or opportunities, and it becomes the hot thing, and then, don't know why they're doing it, but they've got to do it because everyone else is doing it, and we miss out. So, what are the actions that we take to just normalize this concept of generational fluidity so that we do leverage it, not fear it?
Mm. Okay, so this is a very loaded questions, like you mentioned that it's going to need like 2 or 3 podcasts actually to answer this question.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. No, I'm
Yeah, I
warning
know, right?
everyone. You're going to have to come back. Go watch other things in the past and come back to us because it is. No,
Yeah,
it's a big topic. So I'm not
yeah,
expecting certainly all the answers today. I think we'll have a
yeah,
taste. I think we'll
yeah.
just do a tease. We'll do a tease.
Yeah. So I actually wrote something about this in my previous article, right? I think my first article actually on the 27th of May. I will give you the link later.
Please, yes, do
Yeah,
that. We'll put it
yeah,
here so everyone gets a
yeah,
nice little
yeah,
resource
yes.
kit to take away. Yeah, we'll give you a
Okay,
few
so
resources.
but there are 2 things that I want to emphasize from that articles. It's actually the first one, how you can, accommodate the traits they are flowing between generations because it's generational fluidity, right? And each of the groups have their own traits, but it's flowing to each others, right?
Mm,
But first one is the one I want to emphasize is on the communication part, right?
okay. Mhm.
How you become more proactive and how you become more transparent communications. I mean, again, this is something that I believe that each generations are appreciating of this, especially you as the employees from your employer. You are expecting the proactive and transparency of the communications. What is happening in my negotiation? What's happening to our workplace? Something like that. So I think this bits across generations. Right? I know that some of the what I'm mentioning also in my previous post about the old guards
Yeah.
of the culture, right? They are preferring to keep some of the chicken because the new sorry this is confidential. This is only the certain management levels have to know. Okay, that might be those confidential things that put in place. But again, that's why I mentioned proactive and transparent. If you cannot be that transparent with confidential things, then you can be proactive,
Hmm.
so you can took some measures in your communications that give them the right preparations to the news that's coming, something like that. I think it's being appreciated across generations. That's one
Hmm.
thing, right?
Hmm.
Communications.
Hmm.
And the second part is more into the again, I will always talk about upskilling, reskilling, learning, and all those kind of things, right? Why? Because
Yeah.
all of cross generations need development, no
Mm.
matter how old or young you are, you will need development. But why? Because there are sayings that you cannot teach all those new tricks. I'm sorry, I have to use these dogs, but
Yeah.
you can actually,
Yes,
right?
you
I mean,
can. You can.
you
Yep.
can.
Hmm. Yep.
Why? Because well, I saw some the when I try to design like a learning programs, or I try to design about the curriculums, or even when I'm becoming one of the lecturer there, you know, I know that even the new generations,
Mm.
right? Sometimes they don't want to learn. It's not because of the content itself, but it's not because like they feel that they don't have any impact
Yeah.
by learning this. And it's the same when I was at that place like couple of decades ago. Oh, I'm that old. Okay. Decades ago, I also feel the same. Like, why do I have to learn this if I it's not impacting my career? It's not
Yeah.
impacting the way I
Yeah.
work. So that's the trait that have the silver lining there,
I think,
right? So
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
the upskilling in there. So those two things that I want to emphasize is like, yes, this is something that you can do right away
Mhm. Mhm.
and it's practical. You can take a look on your development plan. Are you trying to group this age like learning, how they learn, how you develop them based on your groupings
Mhm.
of the groups? I know it's like the personas, right? It's the
Yeah.
jargon there,
Yeah.
but sometimes you have to learn across the personas,
Correct.
right? Yeah.
Correct. Correct.
So
And I
those
think
are
once
the
again,
things there.
yeah,
Mm.
sorry, Albert. The
Yeah.
piece about once again trying to put people into boxes to try and make some sense and understanding of it,
Yeah.
rather than I think too, what we need to do is allow, and this came through in the comments that I think are really important, allowing
Mm.
people space to discover really who they are as well too, right?
Yes.
Like who are
Exactly.
they? Like what, and that will evolve in time too, right? Like as you move
Yes.
through your career, that will change. And I think
Mm.
we don't, sometimes I think we just need to hold it a little bit lighter. Do you know what I mean? Rather than trying to get
Mm.
answers to everything and everything's going to be absolute. This, I think,
Yes.
generational fluidity to facilitate it from my experience, you need to trust yourself, which means you need to have the skill set, the attitude, the confidence to
Mm.
be able to step into that. But you need to trust other people around you. And for me, and I know we're going to spend much more time on the tactical, the strategic
Yeah.
elements as well,
Yeah.
but you make some really good points. The comms piece is critical. So getting the
Mm.
messaging right around why it
Mm.
matters. Yeah. And because what
Yes.
I've found as well in the past, and I'm mindful of time, and we're going to spend more time around this, is where a lot of these initiatives go wrong. And a lot of, and you'll know that from your change background too,
Mm.
is that the intent and the motive is not stated clearly and there's no
Yeah.
real ownership over it very early on, right? So people need to understand
Mm.
if we're talking about generational fluidity and generational difference and why it matters, I really need to put detail into that and be quite explicit why. And a lot
Yes.
of the time that hasn't been done. So there's a couple of case studies, and we're probably going to run out of time today to talk about them, but I want to come back next time and spend some
Sure,
time
sure.
unpacking those, Albert, around something and in a process that I took an organisation through around this topic.
Yeah.
And what the key touch points were that we actually embedded into the business, even before people started employment with that company. All right. Okay. So I'm going to take you
That's
through.
good.
We're going to
That's
go
good.
end to end. Yeah. Let's go end to end. We're going to have a conversation. We're going to, unpack it. But I'm going to spend some time with it too, and I really would love your input, in that.
Yeah,
but
sure.
I'm going to take the community through an actual example that I used, why we had to do it, and obviously I'll keep the company confidential, but a real example about why we needed to do this, what the risk was, what the cost was to all the different parties and organisation, what we did, and then what the outcome was. Yeah, how we did it and what was the outcome from that. So people can actually start to see the elements, because and some of them are very, very relevant to what you've mentioned before. This is not just a once-off, tick and flick, one-dimensional approach. It's just not, right? When we are talking about generational fluidity and how to leverage generational difference, it is and obviously that's what we both work in, is the area we actually build that in people and in their organisations, but we are creating different type of relationships, environments, conditions. Yeah, we are having to design together, and the people need to be part of it. We'll talk around how to do that, but they need to be part of it, and we need to design different.
Yes.
And so, because you can't bolt this on, right? You can't bolt on this concept into dusty, outdated, disconnected ways of working, right? So I wanted to just today, just talk through, and then we're going to end up on some other questions here, but to start to get people to think about, because the fact of the matter is you might not have a lot of generational difference at the moment, right? And I've worked with organisations on this topic where they're like, well, we're all the same generation, right? Like, we all get along really well. We're all 25 to 26 or whatever, right? And I'm like, that's right. You don't at the moment, but you don't know who's coming.
Yeah.
And you don't know who's going to stay, right? And as you said right at the beginning, you made a really good point. People are not retiring at 65 or whatever here in Australia because of either they don't want to. They're very capable, as they, can have a life. They want to have a good life. They want the money to be able to do what they need to do. They want to, they're still very ambitious, whatever, right? So it's just because you might say at the moment, it's not an issue for me because we're all the same gen and we'll think the same, which is not healthy anyway. And that's a completely different topic.
Yeah.
It does not matter. It will change. And you need to be prepared for when this will change, right? And really what we're talking about here is allowing leaders and teams to explore, to be curious, to allow, like you said, that flow to challenge the way we think about it, to allow people to show up as their best human in whatever that will look like, in terms of, values and beliefs, and making sure they, that they're aligned to the organisation, but that they're not hamstrung as well. So generational fluidity, like I said, that term for me, when I coined it, I was thinking about water and that ability to move and be reshaped. Like when you just think about it, it makes sense.
Yeah.
So
to slip through the gaps, right?
Yeah, well, to slip through the gaps right? And you have to, because if you're too rigid, think about it, right? You imagine, right? Water can get through places that, a metal rod or something that is, rigid and stuck and, made in a certain way never will. And I think that's a really, really important point. So what I want to leave with today is, why, and we're going to come back, we'll do a whole half an hour on the case study. Yeah, we'll do a whole half an hour pulling it apart and really giving it complete detail. Yeah, but I want people to just get a taste now and start to think about their own workplace. Yeah, just as a bit of pre-thinking, their own workplace, their own reality, their own leadership style, their own bias as well too. We all have it, their own judgment. When that was, we all have it. Like I always say to people, no. Everyone is judgmental. If you have a brain, you judge. It's what you do with those judgments that matter, right? It's how we use them that will make the impact either positive or negative. So they'll want people to start doing some pre-thinking around how generational difference is nurtured, like you said. How do we leverage it? How do we celebrate it? As you said, next video, we're going to go diving deep into my case study with your input, insights, and let's do that. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
What is the outcome if we say, "Oh, I don't have to worry about this. We'll get along well. We'll think, we're very connected. There's no real friction here that we need to worry about." What's the cost, do you think, just in closing, to
Mhm.
people and organisations if we don't embrace this concept of
Mhm.
generational fluidity and embed it into our way of working, which we'll unpack next time? What is the cost?
Okay. So before focusing on the cost first, I mean, just to give the context for the
Mm,
cost, right? I know that again, uh, like you also mentioned that we cannot avoid these gaps, right? Because there are gaps for sure,
yeah,
right? But
yeah.
again, how are you going to see through the gaps between the trade that's flowing into the other generations, right? That's one. But if we ignore, this fluidity and then you just stick to the focusing only for the gap, the cost is okay. First, of course, there are commercial costs. Costs are like the tangible costs because you might not be able to leverage your current knowledge base in your companies.
Mm-hmm.
That's one.
Yeah, big one, big one.
Yeah. Why? Because the way you leverage is not only just keeping the current one, the old ones, but it's also to enrich the knowledge, right, from others.
Yeah.
And we focusing only that, like you said, oh, we are doing fine now, nothing's going. Yeah, because you're not acquiring the culture add or the knowledge add or the value add talents from outside here. You're only focusing on, I think again in my post that you're only focusing maybe on the culture fit, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's not wrong because your organization it's been there for like almost 100 years doing this, right? I know it's
Yeah,
extreme, but yeah, if something
yeah,
happens, right? I mean, yeah, because they are focusing on lead and but the extreme sides is also happening. Some organization only wants to find young talents.
yeah.
Like they literally put in their in their recruitment ads like hi young talents. And I was like saying, okay, how young? I feel I'm
So that would be illegal here, right? Under our anti-discrimination laws,
yeah,
you
yeah, but
can't put.
it's still happening. It's still happening here. I know it's like reducing, right? But
Yeah,
it's happening.
no, geez, Louise, you'd be ending up on our,
Yeah.
on our 7 o'clock news break, right? Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
so there's two extremes, right? The ones that keeping their the old guardians again it's not wrong because maybe it served them in the past, right? And the ones that the extreme that we only want to find the certain young new generations,
mm,
these two extremes. But again, how you become like you said generational fluid that you actually find the gaps between these two and you flow into them and
yeah,
combine them and then you enrich your organizations and you're going to avoid the cost in the future because you're not gaining new knowledge for your organizations and you are losing in your competitiveness edge and then you are actually not having the old wisdom,
yeah,
to become your bedrock, to become your benchmark
yeah,
for your new organizations. So how to combine these two? I
yeah,
mean, you're not going to see the cost affecting right away, like you said, right? It's not going to you feel like right away, but when your new competitors or the markets telling you to do this, I mean, again, just look at pandemics. Before pandemics, I actually pitching when I was in my previous in my previous office, sorry, my previous companies,
mm, mm,
that uh to create a virtual meeting room, right? It is before like 2 years or 3 years before pandemics. But they're saying, oh, we have a lot of meeting rooms here. You don't need virtual meeting rooms. They can just go come in. We have like 10 meeting rooms. Like, okay. But then pandemic hits. Now that's how to combine, right? The old knowledge to the
yeah,
new knowledge, right?
yeah, yeah,
But then the new knowledge still need this wisdom. like how you treat people, even across the Zoom, across
Yes.
the online, how you treat them,
Mm.
how you ask them, like, hey, how are you doing? Are you doing fine? I mean, it's something that's currently is being created as let's say a training materials how to do online meetings.
Mm.
But for the previous generations, it's common courtesy sometimes to asking
Yeah.
people how they feel, right?
It's
It's common
different. No,
courtesy. Yeah.
it is an interesting point, right?
Yeah.
Around those also courtesies and
Yeah.
the rules of how we've been brought up to, and culturally that will differ, and it will differ too between, generations as well.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
make a really good point, and as I said, we are going to be diving into the case study in the next video. But
Yes.
there's a couple of things here that I want to touch on before we sort of
Yeah.
wrap up. And these are massive costs, and you won't always see it because it doesn't always seem
Mm.
obvious at first. But I want to talk about employer brand and reputation.
Ah,
So there's
yes.
two massive
For
things here,
branding.
right?
Yes.
There's a lot, right?
Yeah.
We'll go there. We've gone there before. We'll need to go there again, right? Because not everyone gets to
Mm.
see
Mm.
everything we create.
Yeah.
But the employer brand and reputation is linked to also retention, right? So
Yes.
people don't stay in organisations, which you mentioned right at the beginning of this conversation today, that people, regardless, most people, I'm not going to say everyone, right, but most people, if they're going to give up on average 91,000 hours in a lifetime at full-time work, they would
Mm.
like it to make some meaning, right? They would want it
Yes.
to matter. So
Yes.
if I'm coming to a place where I have no opportunity, I don't feel safe, I don't feel supported, I'm not given the creativity, space or the resources to
Yeah.
truly explore and bring my best human,
Mm.
then how long do you reckon I'm going to stay around for? When I get shut
Yeah.
down, when I don't have an opinion, where I can't make a comment, right? Where I'm
Yeah.
told, oh, you don't know anything, or you Gen Ys, or you old
Yeah.
people, whatever, right? It comes both ways, right? It flows across every generation. Though
Yeah.
we don't stay, those people will not stay. And what they will
Yes.
do is when
Yes.
people stay, when people leave, sorry, they will then go and talk about those experiences with family and friends. They certainly do here in
Yeah.
Australia, right?
Yeah.
And I talk about the barbecue test where everyone's around having a bit of a barbecue on the
I like
weekend, and
that.
someone says to them,
Barbecue
hey,
test. That's good
barbecue
one. Yeah.
test, right? What are people saying about your organisation around the barbecue? Hey, I've written about the barbecue test before. It's in my sessions, it's in
Yeah.
my
Yeah. Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
It
Yeah. Yeah.
matters, right?
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
people
I
say
like that.
that's a really good way to look at it, everyone is telling stories about your organization.
Yeah.
How you show up and facilitate this, and as you said, give your people not just the capability, but the
Mm.
environment to really leverage this and embrace it,
Yeah.
then your stories will be determined by the people around the barbecue. And
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
will affect people, their willingness. And as we
Yeah.
know, one of the
Yeah.
greatest concerns that
Yeah.
CEOs have at the moment is
Yeah.
how do I get great talent to meet the
Yeah.
changing skill sets that I need? And
Yeah.
how, when they get here, are we going to,
Yeah.
we'll keep them for as long as we can, but make the most of that relationship? Well, guess
Yes.
what? We're giving you one proven way in which to be able to do that. And that
Yes.
is this concept of generational fluidity. And in our next session, we're going to start to really pull apart a case study. We're
Mm.
going to talk about it very openly. We're going to talk about it very honestly. The good, bad, and the ugly. I'm excited by it and what
Yeah.
what will come from that.
Yes.
Closing points at all before we've gone a bit over time, but we had to because there's so much to go about here.
Yes.
But yeah, generational fluidity as a commercial driver, as a marketing tool, not just something
Yes.
that's good for people,
Yeah.
not just good for people, but a proper strategic driver.
For sure. For
Any
sure.
closing points that you want to put there?
Yeah. I mean, to again, to flow from the previous points, saying that again, uh, like, okay, back to your concept previously about avoiding brain drain, right?
Yeah,
This one of the things, right?
correct.
That's one. Okay. And to closing up, uh, I want to encourage all the leaders, all the management, the founders, the CEOs, all of them, that saying that regardless of how you're going to group your workforce based on their personas. Besides trying to find the way to close that gap, but also try to find the ways to find the similar traits that flow into each of
Yeah,
these groups, right?
yeah.
And then those are the things that you actually can leverage as the priorities first,
Mm, mm,
besides just focusing on the gaps. I mean,
correct.
something you need to think about.
Yeah, that's
I think
awesome.
that's from me, Manan. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think sometimes we have many more similarities and differences if
Yeah.
we make time, space,
Yeah.
and open mindedness to get curious about and explore them. So,
Yes.
Albert, it's
Yeah.
always a joy. There's always something, the community always, really does enjoy the conversations and the Q&A and the
Thank you.
notes and
For
the
me too.
session notes that we do, and I always get
Yeah.
good feedback on you. And then, like I said, for me, I'm very, and I mean this, very privileged to have a smart, kind community around me. So I'm very much looking forward to, as we continue to build our own business and careers, that we're
Yeah.
taking this out
Yeah.
and having these conversations. And that was something that came out. There's a lot of comments, and I need to collate them and put them. And maybe that's what we'll do when we release the video.
Yeah.
But just really around thank you. And people were saying, thank you for having this conversation, right? And you would have
Yeah.
seen those
Yeah.
comments, right? Thank you for
Yeah.
bringing up a different perspective around this. Thank you for, not just saying, oh, well, it's a problem and not doing anything with it, right? Like, you know me long enough, right? My 18 years have been spent saying, if there's something that I believe I can fix or that I can empower other people to sort, we don't need to say, oh, well, don't worry about it. We need to
Yeah.
be not worried about this. We need to be proactive about it.
Yes.
So
Proactive about it.
proactive, as you said right at the beginning, it's always a joy. We're going to be back. Let's go forth and put this into the world. And then, as I said, next time,
Yeah.
get people to come on down, pen, paper, however they want to record it, and let's start talking about a case study with proven practical actions that people are going to be able to take away and are going to be able to
Yes.
start to map back
Yeah.
to their own organizational reality. So that's next time.
Yes. For sure.
Always a joy. Go well, everyone. We look forward to catching up with you again.
Thank you.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye bye. See you.